Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and tonight I'm going to be reviewing to you Layton's Mystery Journey, Catriel and the Millionaire's Conspiracy, Deluxe Edition for the Nintendo Switch. So, some of you may know that I actually reviewed the original 3DS version that came out in 2017, and since most of my thoughts are pretty much the same, I'll leave a link in the description so you can watch or listen to my original review, and most of this review is going to focus on what's changed between its jump from 3DS to Switch. And I guess you could say iPhone too, but I'm a Nintendo reviewer, so give me a break. So the biggest change is that in the original version, I critiqued the puzzles heavily and said that they were too poorly designed and they were even more poorly explained. So oftentimes I had to resort to the internet to even know what to do to solve the puzzle in the first place. This game says that it redesigned most of the puzzles and even reworded most of the hints so that they were a lot more accessible. And I'm not really sure how to pinpoint exactly how they did that, but I never had to go on the internet even once. And mind you, this is coming back to this after a little over 2 years of being absent. So that was a really nice touch that I could solve all of the puzzles either with my own sense of logic or with the in-game currency known as hint coins. From what I've been told, there's also a couple of new puzzles added, and they even brought back the daily puzzle option so you could download a puzzle a day for every game from this port's release until a year has passed. So that's 365 additional puzzles, assuming we're not in a leap year, plus all of the puzzles the game already has, which is staggering. Fans of solving Layton puzzles are going to have a lot to look forward to here. And all of the DLC is pre-included, so you won't have to spend a single penny on any of the outfits. In fact, not only are all of the DLC outfits of the 3DS version readily available, but a couple of touches make it even more fun to dress up Cat and her dog. For one, there's new outfits, which most of them are pretty gorgeous. In addition to that, you can also dress up the dog for the first time, either that or my memory is going really terrible. And you can also get fashion farthings, which are the currency used to purchase outfits, way more easily. Not only can you find them in the open like you can in the original game, but now you can get between 4 to 6 fashion farthings per day if you just turn on the game. So that gives you an incentive to keep playing it even if you don't feel like solving any puzzles or progressing in the story at all that day. It's a way of saying, hey, guess what? If you want to dress up Cat, then you can do that. This game is actually one of the few video games that was specifically targeted mainly towards females, which is why they have a female protagonist. So I feel like the main audience that's going to get enjoyment out of this game are actually girls, which you don't hear that too much in video games, but most of the Layton franchise is actually made up of females. So by dressing up Cat, by letting her redesign her office, it really allows for the traditionally feminine fashion diva to really come out. But even guys like me have a lot of fun with mixing and matching and trying to see what makes the most aesthetic appeal. However, I don't really see myself wanting to justify a full purchase of this game when it's more or less the same as what I reviewed back on the 3DS. While it has been overhauled to take advantage of being on the big screen, I would say that it still, for the most part, feels like a 3DS game for better or for worse. You can use motion controls, touch controls, or traditional controls to play this. Since the original game was designed with a 3DS stylus in mind, that often doesn't translate very well onto the Switch. The few times I tried to use handheld mode, my hand was just way too big. And here in America, you can't just use a regular 3DS stylus. You have to find a special Switch stylus, which is a lot harder to find than you think, especially because it wasn't included with Mario Maker 2, like Europe got. I didn't try the motion controls at all, because why would you want to try motion controls? The Wii era is long gone, people. And then when I tried traditional controls, they worked okay. I definitely felt like the developers probably wished that the Switch was more like the 3DS somewhere along the line, because there were several features that felt like this makes perfect sense on a handheld, but it does not make sense on the Switch. For example, having the memo feature. That was a really cool addition where you could jot down notes about the puzzles on the touchscreen and then review those while you're solving the puzzle. This worked because in the stylus it was really easy to simulate writing something down. But on the Switch, you either have to do that with the control stick, the buttons, or with your finger, which doesn't work as well. Either that or maybe I'm just a terrible artist. But I can imagine pretty much any of you would prefer using, say, a computer mouse or a pen to write the number 2 than having to awkwardly spell it out with a control stick. In addition to that, all of the puzzles have been reworked to work on the single screen, which is great in theory. The problem is because they were based on 3DS designed puzzles that had different artwork and stuff going on each screen, they crammed info that was supposed to be on a separate screen into a tiny little window on the bottom left corner of the TV, and so in some puzzles you have to press L and R so you can switch between the two, which is, I guess, an okay solution for the puzzles that needed it. But what I think would have been cooler is if, say, they took up the entire right side of the screen with just the information that you needed for the puzzle without the additional artwork, and then the description could be in bigger letters on the left. Also, I felt like a lot of the problems that the 3DS version had in nature of it being a handheld just felt exaggerated here on the big screen. I've never been a huge fan of the character designs in Layton games, and here on the big screen in HD, it feels even more offensive. I felt like I wanted to gag every time I saw one of the horrendously unrealistic character designs, and overall I just said, oh no, not this guy again. There were only a handful of people that even looked remotely attractive, even from an aesthetic standpoint, and I just wish I could unsee a lot of these designs. Also, while it is nice to see a Layton game in HD for the first time ever, it still feels like a 3DS game. It doesn't feel like the graphics were optimized to take advantage of the Switch's hardware in the slightest, which I guess depending on your point of view from an artistic standpoint, that could be a win or a loss. Now let's talk about what's the same, which is pretty much everything. You're still moving a magnifying glass around the screen to search for hint coins, which is extremely clunky no matter what control scheme you use. And the story is basically unchanged. And when I say basically, I mean word for word. They got the same voice acting, the same music, the same shenanigans. Overall, it was kind of like being stuck in Groundhog Day, but on a bigger screen. I feel like if you already were burned out by the story and didn't think much of it in the original release, there's not going to be much of a reason to come back here because they don't even address the plot holes that they left hanging in the original game. I wish Level 5 would have maybe poured their resources into maybe giving like one additional case, or if maybe they had made another game in the series altogether, or maybe this is their way of saying, hey, we're in the process of making the sequel, but we decided to port the original version to the Switch because 3DS owners. Okay, whatever. So, in other words, this is not the type of game that's designed for people that want to relive Layton's mystery journey. It's more so of people that either didn't get a chance to try out the original version, or people that were turned off by the reviews of the original game and would like to experience the puzzles being redesigned, new puzzles, etc. So if that's the case, then I would say this is definitely worth giving another try. As much as I've griped about the transition from 3DS to Switch being very sloppy and unintuitive, I do think that this is an enjoyable game, especially when the three characters talk amongst themselves. Their chemistry, and lack thereof in certain cases, is extremely endearing, and I actually like Kat, Ernest, and Cheryl a lot better than I even liked Layton and Luke in the main games. That overall was one of the biggest reasons why I decided to sit through this story again, as I was like, I want to hear more of Cheryl's snark. I want to hear more of Kat's scatterbrainedness. I want to know what happens to these characters. Also, I got a new set of headphones right before beating this, and I must say, the orchestration sounds particularly amazing with headphones, so make sure you've got surround sound set up. Overall, I'd say give this a try. Spoiler alert, this is probably going to make it on my top 10 best games of 2019 that I've reviewed. While it may sound like I hate the game, it's more so of I wish that they would have reworked the game to make it seem more like a console game as opposed to a glorified 3DS game on the big screen. Nevertheless, the endearing main characters and the smooth orchestral beauty make it a joy to read, even if it's not necessarily a joy to revisit. So only pick this up if you haven't experienced it before and if you're a huge fan of the Layton series. Even if you're not, expect to have way too many puzzles. So many puzzles that you practically won't know what to do with them. But if you're the type of person that loves exercising your logic bone, then this is the game for you, with the most puzzles in any Layton game to date. With that, thank you very much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, etc. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and keep using your brain. Bye!
This is an interesting one.